we're going to talk a lot about that in part 2.
Yeah.
But we got to get there first.
Yeah. So again, today what we're going to do is essentially, we've really, I feel like, giving our audience a lot of information on the science of weight loss, right? And this is, for the most part, where most people focus a lot of time on. They want to know, like, do I eat this? Do I do that? Do I, how much do I exercise? Do I cardio? All these questions essentially can be focused on in what we've presented to you, which, to essentially wrap up, it's energy balance first and foremost, right? So whatever you saw on social media, if it doesn't affect energy on the energy inside or the energy outside, for the most part, it's just going to be a scam. But most popular things are essentially trying to tweak either the energy that's coming in or the energy that's going out.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, we mentioned this in the energy balance episode, and I'll say it again. A lot of people will equate the energy in and energy out with calorie counting or tracking or being really specific with that kind of thing. And you don't have to do that. So the changes that you make are driving that energy balance equation, right? Whether you intend for them to or not. If you increase your exercise and you just start exercising, you're affecting your calories in, calories out. If you cut back on, dessert, you're affecting your calories in, calories out. So the changes that you make don't have to be specifically targeted at certain calorie numbers or, a certain reduction. They just have to, be kind of the common sense things to do sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it's not common sense, but, if they're good changes moving in the right direction, that energy balance equation is being affected whether you realize it or whether you intend for it to be or not. So any good change for weight loss is going to do that.
Exactly.
And if it's something like, we'll just stop eating this food completely. Like, sure, that may lead to, a reduction in calories if you cut out that specific food, but that doesn't mean that it's, great from an overall health perspective or optimal. Right. So a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is more finding the balance of things that matter the most and helping you to construct your diet. And we'll talk on this a little bit later, in a way that maximizes the potential for success by increasing the sustainability and giving you a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah. And that's, I think, when we get into week 2, that's one thing we'll pound in a lot, right? Because, and I guess we'll just plug it here, sustainability is the key. If you can't sustain it. So again, we talk about our pyramid or hierarchy. Of course, we focus a lot of time on energy balance, but the second thing right behind it is, if you could do this for a long period of time, great. But if it's something that's so drastic that you can only keep up for 3 months or 6 months, for the most part, if you go to our last episode about defense, the body will fight against that stuff.
Yeah. And so interesting, in episode 1, the energy balance episode, I mentioned that, at some point the hierarchy will change.
Yeah.
And when you have lost the weight that you need to lose or want to lose, and you've hit your, goal weight, energy deficit is no longer something that you need, because you need to go to energy maintenance.
Yeah.
And so consistency and sustainability then jumps up to number 1. So how did you get there? Keep doing that if you want to stay there.
Right.
So it can't be, overly difficult, overly complicated changes that, are very high intensity that you can't sustain, because if not, you're not going to stay where those changes got you to. Yeah. At least not completely.
Well, and again, I think we need to hit this point again over and over, because I have a lot of patients who have diabetes, right? And they'll do some drastic changes, do great, and they'll get their sugars under control. And we'll say, you've cured it, you've reversed it, you reversed it. But it's only reversed as long as you're doing what you're doing now. Right. So if you trend back to what you were doing before, like when guys cut all his soft drinks out and now he's drinking it all back, when he comes back, it's not going to surprise anyone that the sugar is back up again.
And see, that's why numbers are not... So I have a whole episode on this. It's on goal setting. And so the difference between process or system goals and outcome goals, where an outcome would be, the weight on the scale or your blood sugar, your A1C. And so I look at it as the carrot on a stick scenario. When you take a goal, it becomes your carrot. And as long as you have that carrot to keep driving you, that's great. But when you hit that goal and you catch the carrot, if you don't have another carrot to put on there,
Yeah.
what's going to motivate you to continue moving? Nothing.
Right.
So it's like, instead of focusing on the number,
Yeah.
focus on the process and the systems that you have in place to get to that carrot.
Yeah.
And then you'll always have a carrot, because there's always something you could be doing better.
Absolutely.
You know, if you shift your attention over here, you're probably lagging a little bit over here. So you can keep going back and forth. There's always something we could be doing better.
Perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Michael, it's so interesting as we move along to what we've gone over. We talked about deficit and energy balance and using the macros to really make it to our advantage, right? I really learned a lot from you when we were talking about protein.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, it's one of those things that we hear a lot, like protein's important, how much protein is important. But the more you look at the research, you realize that needs to be a focus on food, right? If you're not like, I don't know what to eat, I don't know how to eat, I have a whole plate, what do I prioritize? Prioritize the protein, because there's a lot more benefit from a weight loss standpoint if you optimize your protein first than to worry about cutting out all food groups or gluten or whatever.
Right. And that has several, there are several reasons for that. Number one, because the increases in muscle mass and recovery, and the increase in satiety, and the increase in thermic effect of food, which is that energy outside of the equation. And fiber is the same, because they're pretty equal in both of those aspects. And so I guess if you could summarize that, it's focus on the protein, and then getting as many, whole grains, non-starchy fruits and vegetables and everything as you can.
Right.
And we have a term for those, non-starchy vegetables and fruits as nutrient dense versus calorie dense. And I would challenge you to try to get overweight or obese eating nothing but salad vegetables, like with no dressings or anything on it. Like, just try to eat lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers and onions and get overweight on that. It's going to be really hard, because you can only fit so much of that stuff in your stomach before you're just miserable.
Absolutely.
And then you're 63 calories in, you got a lot of day left.
Yeah.
I mean, those numbers are not scientifically accurate. I'm just,
but it's true.
I'm making the point.
Yeah. No, I think a cup of spinach is like 7 calories. It's something like
nothing.
Yeah. So, you will be tired of chewing before you would even reach your calorie goal. Right. And I think, continue to speak on that, but because these foods have fiber, they have macronutrients, all these minerals in there that we can't even fit into a supplement. So that's maybe the thing, that these nutrients that we find in fruits and vegetables, we can't put in vitamins. We don't know what they are, but there's something our body knows, which is they know what to do with those things. And so when we increase those things, not only are we affecting the energy outside, but we're also triggering a lot of things in the brain as far as how much can we eat of this stuff, right? There's signals in your brain that if you eat like a handful of grapes, I tell you should probably stop after a handful or two. Versus like Oreo. Yeah,
well, and that's an interesting thing, because food, we haven't talked about this yet, but I'm glad you brought this up, because this is a thing. Your brain has a limit as far as how much enjoyment you get from a particular food. And it has to do with the, I guess, flavor category, right? So you have, sweet, salty, fatty, sour, umami, all those kind of different flavors.
Right.
And if you focus on one of those, you'll get tired of eating it, right? So if you just have sweet, you'll eat sweets, but at a certain point, you're just going to get tired of eating the sweets and stop. But if you were to switch over and eat something salty, your brain would be like, ooh, a new thing.
Yeah.
And then you'd be able to eat that. And so if you have a plate that has sweet and sour and salty and fatty and whatever, and you just keep going back and forth, you're constantly resetting that limit, because every bite is a new thing.
Right.
And so your brain never tells you to stop, because it's just like, ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy.
Yeah.
And so think about how much kale can you eat?
Right.
Do you still enjoy do you still enjoy it after 40 pieces of kale?
Yeah.
Is your brain like, man, I can't wait for number 41. Let's go. No, it's not, because it's kind of stopping that.
Yeah.
But if you eat, kale over here, and then an M&M, and then an Oreo, and then eat some trail mix or something, that's a little bit, your brain is just continually just keeping you going.
Yeah.
So,
well, and again, I think this is why with processed food, these food scientists, that's what they're manipulating, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have hot Cheetos, which is like, and it look like those sugar taste, it's spicy taste, it's a texture thing. They spend a lot of money and time trying to optimize these things, because it's kind of like saying they want to sell their product, they want to you to eat as much as you can, and unfortunately, it's just high in calorie, fat, sugar, salt, everything.
Yep, that we mentioned that millions and millions of dollars paid to psychologists, engineers to make food as addictive as possible, so that you spend as much money as possible. And I'm going to change topic here. I'm just going to say something that I thought about yesterday. After our last episode that we recorded, I was like, I need to be more vocal, because I'm sitting here like shaking my head in agreement with you.
Yeah.
And people that are watching it on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever, they can see that. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can't see me shaking my head. And when I was talking about the body's self-defense system, and I had my hands up and I was saying, if you're right here and you move over here, and people in video can see that, but people on audio, they can't see that. They're just like, what is he talking about? So I need to be better about explaining what I'm doing with my hands, because it doesn't translate to audio.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
it's just a side thought.
note. Yeah. Well, no. And again, I think we've beat that point again, like macros, energy balance. It's the reason we always say whole foods. It's easier to meet those goals with whole foods than it is with processed foods. We also end up talking a lot about exercise, right? And I think, and it was good we talked about that, because again, we always wanted to clarify, like people who just jump on the treadmill and run for an hour and a half a day or whatever, you may see some energy, like some weight loss in that standpoint, but in the grand scheme of things, it's much easier to adjust the food, because the amount of time it takes to run.
Right. It's all about time.
Correct. It's time and convenience.
And that was something, I say this a lot to people that I coach, is I used to think that money was going to be the limiting factor in my life. It's not.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah.
Like time, you can never get it back.
Right.
And it is by far our most valuable resource.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about how much time do I have to commit to changes, you're going to benefit the most from the ones that take the least amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be diet over exercise. So if you're short on time, you need to get as much exercise as you can in the time you have, but you need to save yourself a ton of time and focus on diet first.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny, because I feel like because I want to spend more time on exercise, but this is a kind of a side note here. When we talk about the mindset part, which is part 2, which is, we talked yesterday about, of all the people that work on weight loss, 95% can't keep it by year 3. Everything's right back. So only about 5% do it. I feel like that 5%, and people are like, 5%, I want to be like, they manage their time. I think that is such a big piece of it. Like, because I have a lot of people that's like, well, I don't have time to exercise, or I don't have time to do whatever. But you look at their Instagram time, it's like 3 hours, right? So obviously we have time somewhere. Something is happening somewhere, but
you're putting people on blast today. These are the conversations that sometimes I wish that I could just have them and just be like, well, I can't do that. That's not part of the way that we coach. But like people need to be aware of, how they're spending their time. And one thing that separates the 5% from the 95% is knowing where they want to be and being focused on what they're doing now to get themselves there, and recognizing those things that they spend their time on that are not getting them there, and then over time getting those things out of their routine. And it's not to say they don't do those things, they just don't do them as frequently, and if they do, they recognize it. And I have an example of my personal, like I get on Twitter a lot, and I'm just scrolling, and I'm really bad about scrolling just like everybody else. But I look at enough psychology and digital minimalism and motivational stuff that every now and then my algorithm will just throw me a post that says, you want to spend less time on social media doom scrolling? And I'm like, yes, I do. And I just turn my phone off and put it down. And I'm like, thanks for, calling me out, So my usage of social media has basically generated the algorithm to tell me to stop using it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because I think when the sooner people realize that I probably have more time than I think I have, but I need to figure out what to prioritize, that will make any goal easier. In fact, there was a book I read. My dad actually made me read it when I was in junior high, called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Fantastic, fascinating book. But essentially in the very beginning, it was like breaking your things into like, urgent and important, urgent but not important, not urgent but important, and not urgent, not important. And you essentially, in the morning when you start, you're breaking your tasks in these 4 categories. And essentially the not urgent and not important things just need to go, like, you need to get rid of those things. Yeah. But also paying attention to things that are urgent but not important, and figuring out how to like prioritize those things.
Talking about books,
yeah,
like I'm reading a really good one right now, and I won't go into a lot of detail on it because I haven't finished it yet. But so far, it is one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and it is "The Mountain Is You." Unreal, super good. I feel like we could do a whole podcast episode on books.
Yeah.
And if people would be interested in some book recommendations, I know not everybody's a reader, but a lot of people like to read.
Yeah.
I can make some really good book recommendations to help, give you more information on the behavioral change, because we're going to be talking about that a lot coming up in the next, several weeks.
Yeah. I think that'd be great because, again, I mean, we're in such a digital age where we try to get information off 5-second videos, and books have nuance, right? So books give you, it's got long form podcast gives you nuance that help you understand a topic better than a 15-second video.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I have not. That was my goal. Like health wise, my stuff is pretty good. I make little tweaks here and there and change up my workout every, few months or so. Diet wise, I'm pretty dialed in with that. My goal for this year was to start reading because I have not been a reader.
Yeah.
My problem with reading was always, I would read a whole page and then get to the end of it and not remember a single thing that I just read. Right. And so I'd have to reread a page and then reread it again and reread it again. And it was not a thing that I was good at. But I recognized that if I want to get good at something, and this is applicable to anything, if you want to get good at it, you have to do it, and you have to do it again and again and again and practice, and you get better at it. And so I forced myself to start reading. And I'm on book 47 of this year.
Awesome.
Right now.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you figure it out. And I read a tip on reading. I think I reread Atomic Habits not too long ago in preparation for part 2. And one of the things I overlooked when I read it the first time was the 2-minute rule. And I mean, we'll spend time talking about this, but with the 2-minute rule, it's whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever goal you set or habit that you're trying to build. If it's a big one, like reading, for example, and normally you would say, well, I'm going to read a chapter today. Well, a chapter is, some chapters are really short. Some chapters are really long. Some books are really boring in certain aspects, and some are great all the way through and some are not. And so reading a whole chapter sometimes might take a person an hour. Some people, it might take them 2 minutes. That's a really hard goal because there's nothing definite about it. And so it's also, when a goal is hard, we're less likely to do it. Right. And so to remove the difficulty of it and make you more likely to just get the rep in, set a 2-minute timer, open your book and start reading. And when the 2-minute timer goes off, if you're not into what you're reading, just put it down. Get back to it tomorrow. You finished your goal. You accomplished it. Check it off your list. And if you're really into it, just keep doing it. Keep reading.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? So it's like you said, kind of breaking things down into different categories, but breaking down a goal into, achievable portions and then setting up yourself to overachieve rather than setting yourself up for disappointment if you don't finish the chapter because you're an hour and a half in and it's super boring. Right.
Well, then again, I mean, tying that back into any kind of habit, specifically in exercise, it's we always say, right, you have to start small. The guys that don't work out and like, tomorrow I'm starting P90X, I'm going to hit it. Don't, but even if people, and then this will bring on the mindset side too, but sometimes people will downplay their team. Like they're like, oh, I only walked for 5 minutes. I was like, but you walked 0 before.
Yeah.
So 5 is better than 0, you know? And again, it's one of those that if you set a timer to say, I'm going to walk 5 minutes or I'm going to walk to the mailbox and back every single day, you can build on that.
Yeah, and the Mountain Is You addresses that in one section. It's talking about the emotions that we feel or the way that we feel about our success. And if you constantly downplay your success, it's probably a symptom of something deeper that's going on. And it's probably this, you don't feel like you are good enough to attain success.
Yeah.
Right. And so any success you do have, you try to downplay it or come up with reasons as to why it's not success because you don't feel like you're capable of it or good enough to have it, right? And so that is this book is like deep, and I have been personally attacked by it like 8 times, like almost like they have just been following me around for my entire life and writing a book on all of the bad habits and things that I've had, because I struggle with the same things everybody else struggles with.
Absolutely.
We all do, and so it has just been, I think that's why, because it has challenged me in the first 2 chapters so many times. And, you know, I love that challenge. I love the, you know, getting feedback on things that I could be doing better or ways that I could be thinking that are better, because it just makes me better. That's what I want to be. You know? It's that drive.
Awesome. See, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to have an episode on that because that's awesome.
For sure.
Well, again, so, you know, we've talked about the 3, the last one, and I think last week's episode was the most fascinating because, again, what we're trying to say is when you don't see the results you're looking for when you're losing weight, it's not always a willpower thing. Right. They are literally things in the body that are fighting against weight loss. And so, of course, we brought out a lot of strategies on how to affect that. But again, don't get discouraged when you're like, why is my body not letting me do it? It's designed to keep you alive. Yeah. It's always going for comfort over, you know, health or happiness or whatever. Yeah. I kind of want to just read through my summary here, going through all the different episodes. So I'm just going to read it because I have it pretty succinctly laid out here, and then we can kind of talk about some recommendations, and then we'll wrap it up after that, I guess. For sure. All right. So first thing, energy balance. The energy equation for that is energy in, which is the food and drink we consume, is equal to energy used or energy stored, right? So what we burn, what we store. The energy in, like I said, is food we drink and consume. Energy out can be broken down into 4 parts. It's a resting metabolic rate, which is just what's keeping us alive. 2 is NEAT, non-exercise activity, and that accounts for about 10 to 20%. Exercise activity is exercise. It accounts for about 5 to 10%. Thermic effect of food is 5 to 10%, and that's just the energy we use to eat, digest, absorb, and all that, right? You can modify resting metabolic rate by increasing your muscle mass. You can't really affect NEAT, non-exercise activity, because it's all unconscious, right? So you don't have a lot of control over that. Exercise, you do have control over it because you can either not exercise or exercise. So, and then the level of exercise kind of depends. Thermic effect of food, you do have a little bit of control over that because the types of foods that you eat affect that. All right. The body will always seek energy balance. So if the energy in goes down, the body will reduce its energy used or reduce the energy stored or its storage capacity. If the energy goes up, the body will either increase the energy used or it will increase the energy it stores or its fat, right? So increasing or decreasing energy used is part of the body's defense mechanism against weight loss. So you will either move less or move more to account for that energy difference. If you aren't paying attention to your physical activity and making intentional adjustments, you're going to have a harder time losing weight, right? So the only way to lose weight is to consume fewer calories than the body needs consistently over a long period of time. Correct. Now that is a broad enough definition to encompass a whole lot of different strategies, but all of those strategies effectively are accomplishing that. Yes. Macronutrients. Protein is the most important macronutrient because it helps increase skeletal muscle mass, which, you know, in response to resistance exercise, has a much higher thermic effect of food than the other macronutrients. It provides more satiety than carbohydrates or fat as well.
Fiber, often overlooked, is also important because it promotes gut health, regulates blood sugar and cholesterol. Its thermic effect of food and satiety are similar to protein. Carbohydrates and fats have much lower thermic effect of food and less satiety than protein and fiber. They both serve important roles in the body. When it comes to long-term weight loss, the ratio of carbohydrates to fats in the diet doesn't make a huge difference when calories and protein are equal. So finding a balance that you enjoy, one that you can adhere to, one that optimizes your performance and minimizes your hunger, it's what's best for you.
Yeah.
Exercise, extremely important for long-term weight loss,
Right.
especially muscle strengthening exercise. However, exercise alone will almost never be the primary driver of the caloric deficit required for successful weight loss.
Right.
Exercise for all of the other health benefits, but let the diet do the heavy lifting. And again, prioritize exercises that you enjoy and do them often.
Yes.
Body's self-defense mechanism. So the body developed over a long period of time to prevent weight loss because for the vast majority of human history, weight loss was a death sentence, essentially. Because we only existed in our current food environment for about 0.02% of modern human history, which I didn't give that number yesterday, but yeah it's like 0.02%. We just have not had enough time to adjust to that. The defense mechanism has 3 stages: defend, restore, and prevent. In the defend stage, the body works to stop weight loss by decreasing metabolic rate, increasing hunger, decreasing satiety, and increasing the reward response from highly palatable foods. In the restore stage, the body stores energy at a faster than usual rate until it returns to its original set point. If this occurs too rapidly, the body can increase its overall fat storage capacity by creating new fat cells, which puts you in a worse position than where you started. In the prevent stage, your body gets better and better at activating the defense system, which makes each consecutive weight loss effort more difficult. And so once a person develops obesity, it essentially becomes a self-sustaining state.
Yeah.
All right. The diet hierarchy of prioritization.
There we go. This is what we're talking about.
Number 1, energy deficit. You gotta have it. Number 2, adherence and consistency and sustainability, like that whole package. Number 3, protein and fiber. Number 4, carbohydrates and fats. And number 5, literally everything else.
Yeah.
And that includes, meal frequency, meal timing, fasting, all those other things. Like any kind of modifications to that, all of that is afterthoughts.
Correct.
Supplements, all afterthoughts. If you do those first 4 and dial those in, any other thing is not going to produce any better benefits than anything else.
Yeah.
So recommendations to keep in mind there, focus on whole foods over processed foods whenever possible.
Right.
Because the whole foods are going to have a higher thermic effect of food, because if it's super processed, we don't have to work too hard to digest that.
Right.
So we're getting more calories from it. Focus on nutrient-dense foods over energy-dense foods whenever possible. And then prioritize food over supplements.
Yep. Yes. Well, for sure. Because I think, first of all, I think we're being broad on purpose, right? Because there's a lot of strategies.
Yeah.
But if people come in often saying, well, what kind of supplement should I pay for or buy? We would much rather you just buy better quality whole foods than to buy more supplements. Yep. And like you said, the reason we put this hierarchy in place is because there's so many strategies out there, right? People do intermittent fasting, people do low carb, they do whatever they do. But it's got to be intermittent. The reason we got to do the top 4 right first. So if we do the top 4 right, the bottom 4 you can kind of figure out for yourself.
Yeah, and it's so much flexibility. Just because this works for this person, doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah,
your schedule, your life does not look just like theirs,
right?
And so what they do doesn't translate.
Yeah.
Like you can find ways to do the first 4 and make it work.
Yeah.
Or at least the first 3, because carbohydrates and fat, you can adjust those, whatever works best for you too, as long as you're, minimizing your hunger, optimizing your performance, and you can stick to it.
Yeah.
So I would say the first 3 are probably the most important ones. After that is literally just what works best for you.
Yes. Perfect.
Exercise, hierarchy of prioritization.
There
Ready?
we go. Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, show up.
Yes. That's for sure.
Number 2, show up repeatedly, adherence and consistency, right? Number 3 is incorporate resistance training. And, you can throw cardio in there too, if you like that.
That's right.
I don't like to run, but we'll throw it in there.
Yeah.
But definitely you should do resistance training. Number 4, progressive overload, which is increasing, the difficulty over time. And number 5 is everything else. So recommendations there is, for show up, just do something.
Yeah.
Something is better than nothing. It doesn't have to be optimal. It doesn't have to be good by anybody else's standards. It just has to be something.
Right.
Something that's moving us in the right direction. Number 2, find something you enjoy and just do it repeatedly.
There you go.
Prioritize doing stuff you enjoy, because if you force yourself to do things that you don't like to do, you're just going to have more excuses not to do them.
Yeah.
Like for me, for a while there, it was leg day. Like leg day would come up, and man, something always came up on leg day,
Yeah.
It was I guess it was just Tuesday. It just was a bad day.
Right.
And, but anyway,
Yeah.
More muscle. So the resistance training to build more muscle, more muscle is going to equal better outcomes in the long run.
Yeah.
It's going to make it easier to sustain the weight loss. It's going to, just from a general health benefit, increasing your stability, your balance, your grip strength, your independence as you get older. Just so many different benefits to resistance training that you got to do it.
Yeah.
Or you should do it. I don't say you've got to. You definitely should.
Well, yeah, especially in our clinic where we focus not only on length of life, but quality of life.
Yeah.
We start realizing the quality of life, the exercise piece plays too much of a big role in the quality of life piece.
Yeah, I think this year or last year, they basically came out and said, if you're not resistance training as part of your regular routine, you're basically hurting your health in the long run.
Yeah.
That's how important it is.
Yeah.
And it's been overlooked for so long.
Absolutely.
And there was a book written not too long, or probably a few years ago, but I haven't read it yet, but it talks about that, how things are going to start shifting away from just, steady state cardio as the recommendation to lifting weights or doing some form of resistance training as the baseline. And we've already seen they added that into the minimum recommendations for exercise for everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's probably going to continue to shift in that direction as we start to see the benefits of it more and more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finally, like I said, the progressive overload, increasing the resistance, the duration or the frequency over time to always make it more challenging. Because your body is going to get really good at what it's doing.
Correct.
And you're going to start getting less and less benefit from it unless you increase the resistance or increase the difficulty.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a big one too, because some people feel like if they're 50 years old, they have to bench like 500, right? You don't have to go up. Yeah, there's some people that are crazy out there. But like I said, one strategy, right, is to raise the weight, but another one is just to raise the difficulty. So you can either raise the rep count, you can try different exercises that target that muscle differently. You can do all sorts of things.
Just slow down.
Or slow down, yeah. Slow down.
Time under tension is a term. Like it's just, if you take longer to do the rep, you might. So like if you're benching a weight that you feel comfortable with, try doing a 2-second count on the down movement and then a 2-second count on the up movement instead of just kind of pounding it out. Take time, see how many reps you can do.
Exactly.
It's going to be a lot less than you should be able to do. Than you normally do.
Exactly. And so, right, if you're worried about injury, like I don't want to lift so much weight that I might tweak something, you don't always have to.
No, you don't have to go heavy.
You can find multiple ways to make it more challenging.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception too, is like you have to, go super heavy to get any benefit. No, not at all.
Yeah.
And there was this misconception in the past too, that like if you want to lose weight and get toned, you have to do lightweight and high rep.
Right.
And if you wanted to get big and strong, you needed to do heavyweight and low rep. It does not matter.
No.
If the volume is the same,
right,
the outcome is the same.
Right.
So you can get big and strong with lightweight. You just have to do a lot more reps.
Yeah.
So the thing that matters most is how much time do you have to spend in the gym?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you go super light, you're going to have to be in there a long time to get all those reps in.
Right.
So there is a benefit to adding more weight. If you're time restricted.
Right.
But if you have, physical limitations, you got to keep that into account too.
Yeah.
Getting hurt is not worth going too heavy, because if you get hurt, now you're out
months
particularly.
Longer,
yeah, if not longer.
Yep. Dang, Michael, well, that's perfect. That was a great wrap up.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts that you have?
Yeah. Where do we go from here? So we've spent the last 6 episodes talking about weight loss and how that works from a biological standpoint. But here's where I'm going to get real. None of it matters if we don't do something with it.
Right.
So if you listened to episodes 1 through 6 and you're with us right now and you don't follow us into part 2 and actually put this information to good use,
right,
it was a complete waste of time. Like none of this, you don't have to know any of this to be successful.
Right.
We wanted to put the information out there to kind of give you a little bit more context to what's happening with your body, what's happening during plateaus when things start to get challenging,
right,
so that you can be aware of them and know that that's something that you can overcome.
Right.
But if we don't have plans to actually do something with it, all of this information is useless.
Right.
So as much as I love it and as much as I spent time, trying to put it all together, it doesn't mean anything if we don't do anything with it. So that's what we're going to get into in the next part is how do we take this information and actually put it into practice in real ways that we can be successful with long term.
Fantastic. Yeah. We want to be the 5%.
We want to be the 5%.
Yeah.
Make some t-shirts.
That's right. A t-shirt. All right. Well, thanks, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely.